Welcome to the Executives Lounge. This is your podcast host, Christine Fauner. I am bringing you amazing stories from amazing women in leadership from across the globe. Let's get started. So I'm here today with Bethany Rucker. She is outside of Dallas in Texas. She's a people leader and director of sales operations. And we actually got connected because we are both Central Washington University alumni. And so she's worked at places like Microsoft and T-Mobile, and now she's the director of people leadership at a leading corporation in the United States. And I'm just so excited to have you on the show today, Bethany. Welcome. Hello.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Christine. Yes, go Wildcats. So very much looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't have to talk about years we graduated because mine was a while ago now. But go Wildcats. They used to be really horrible at sports, and now I don't think they're too bad anymore.
Yeah. I remember. So the time and the place, if you can place me, and for those who know, it'll kind of be revealing my age a little bit. I was there when John Kitna was there. And so it was such a big deal that he had made it to the NFL. And, even some years after that, maybe even 10 years after that, they were thinking about calling him back to the Seahawks, which I thought was a really exciting thing.
That is, and I didn't actually know that. So that's really interesting, especially since Siwoo has never really been great at sports. So it's pretty cool that we got a pro out of it.
We got at least one. I don't know if there are any others.
Well, we started talking today, Bethany, with really looking at storytelling. And, you have some exciting stuff going on with your family. And I thought maybe you want to share a little bit of that real quick.
Happy to. So yes, a lot of intergenerational activity is what I was sharing with Christine today. My parents are involved in the opening of the International African American Museum that's happening in Charleston this upcoming weekend. And it's a really exciting event. It sort of purports to be sort of the African American Ellis Island, as it were. So the unique thing about this museum is that folks can research their genealogy, kind of making the connection from their story in the United States, their family story in the United States, to their family story in Africa. And the way my father got involved is he was managing a chemical plant nearby Charleston, in an area, in a piece of location where they would build the bricks for the streets of Charleston. So there was, beautiful kiln work done to make these bricks in these, very heated ovens, and lots of work by, and enslaved crafts people who, worked really hard to, build an important piece of our country. And so just thinking about that, reflecting on this weekend, my family had an amazing Juneteenth celebration over the weekend, and just, those things are top of mind, right? Just all of the work that's been done, by, of course, people of all backgrounds, but, particularly top of mind is the work of enslaved people to help build our country. So really excited for my parents to go be a part of this celebration. But my grandmother lives with them, and my children are with me. And so we're kind of tag teaming, making sure that great grandmother for my kids has what she needs as far as getting meals and getting laundry and just good company while my folks are away.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I talk a lot about storytelling being so powerful in identifying who we are and really understanding who we are. And, for so many of us, I have a Native American history and background. For so many of us, our stories were lost or stolen or obliterated. And so I just had to give a minute to talk about this because, as we find pieces of our stories, we become wholer and wholer and wholer, and we really can self-identify to places and people. And so, I love that you have this intergenerational storytelling that's happening in such a powerful way that it's now spreading to so many other people that may be able to tell more of their story in the future.
It's so exciting. And I'll just add one little detail, Christine. It's something that I didn't think very much of, but as you get older, you sort of get curious about your family history. And so, of course, Father's Day, in addition to Juneteenth, was this past weekend. And so a really exciting gift that I was able to give my dad is just his own father's birth certificate. And just being able to see just another piece of family history that we've not been able to really connect with. And so again, yeah, just that piece of storytelling, knowing your own story so that you can help people with theirs.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to bring up too, we know parts of our story, but we also know that there are parts maybe missing or parts that have gaps. And so
Yeah,
anytime you can fill in a gap, it feels really good. So
yeah,
that's one of the most invaluable Father's Day Juneteenth gifts you could give, I think.
yeah, very much so.
Well, speaking of stories, I would love for you to share a little bit of your story with us, just about who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, well, it all starts growing up studying music. So I started playing the flute when I was 8 years old. It was kind of a random thing. I just chose kind of flute, kind of a little bit out of midair. I think one of my aunties played flute, and I wanted to be like her at the time. And I was really serious about it growing up. Lots of competitions, lots of time in bands and orchestras, and so it was really my passion growing up. So I studied music in college, I studied music in grad school, and I was nearing the end of my graduate school journey at Rice University in Houston, where September 11th happened. September 11th happened my very last semester of school. And so that sort of rearranged my brain a little bit. And I thought, gosh, I've been doing music for some time. There's a couple of paths in front of me. I could go start auditioning for orchestras. I could go take on more schooling and be a professor. But what else can I do? And is there something as meaningful that I'm also talented in? And so it was kind of like this crisis of what else can I do with my life? And so I took a temp job. I took a temp job working for an investments company, and always grateful for the chance that they took on me, and rose from running the reception desk to assisting money managers. This organization was part of Wells Fargo at the time, and I did some business banking work as well. And toward the end of my time at Wells Fargo, with all of those complications that that were happening at the time, because I was there during some of that tricky time, I was thinking even more broadly, what else can I do to kind of set the stage for the rest of my career? And at that point, even though I had already had a graduate degree in music, I decided to get a second master's to get my MBA. And that was really eye-opening, just learning even more about the capital markets, about how to read a balance sheet and an income statement, all of the great relationships that I had with super smart folks in the area. At the time, I was in the Seattle area. And so, had peers from Microsoft and Boeing and Amazon and, all of the great companies that are located in the Northwest, and really appreciated not only the quantitative, but also the qualitative education that I got at the University of Washington. And so at the end of that journey, and throughout that journey was actually the housing crisis. So I'm kind of come to reflect, Christine, a lot of my career journey is impacted by, kind of those series of macroeconomic crises, and just, learning within myself to be resilient and adaptable to those crises has really made a difference. I did some analyst work at Microsoft. I came to T-Mobile shortly after the Un-carrier revolution, as they like to call it. Had a great journey at T-Mobile. Rose to my first people manager job, which, my passion is definitely people and helping people do their best work. And then from there, have done some work at Microsoft as well, leading teams in an operational context. If I were to give anybody advice on their career journey, not everybody knows what they're going to do in their career. Not everybody knows what they want to be when they grow up, per se. But my recommendation is just to stay flexible and adaptable, be self-aware, know what you're good at, and be confident that you know what you're good at. Because a lot of people will say, oh gosh, that's too hard for you, or, I don't know if I see that in you. But if you see it in yourself, and if you're adaptable, even in times of crises, you're going to go far.
Well, and that's great. I love that you're giving that advice, because as I'm listening to your story, I'm hearing these pivotal moments in like societal events, right? I remember that, 9/11 for so many of us was such a defining moment. Everybody that was old enough to understand what was going on knows exactly where they were when the towers fell.
Yeah.
And it was such a moment of crises for us. And then following that was the housing crisis and the first recession we had as adults, and we were in the Gulf War, or we were in the Gulf War, we were in, so I feel like there were these moments for us that were defining in opportunity or lack thereof, or defining in well, that's not working out, or that's not really what I want, or how am I really living the life I really want to live. So I think you outline that really well, that you can pivot sometimes by choice, and you sometimes have to change directions by lack of opportunity available.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of life is just how we respond to the hand we're dealt.
You talked about you finding your passion for people leadership, which I found mine pretty early on in my career too. I came from an operations and systems background, and I learned really early on that your systems and processes are only as good as the people that you serve, right? And so, who are the people that you serve, and what is the problem that you solve as a people leader?
Yeah. Well, throughout my career, it's been focused on sales operations. Everything I've done has been an underpinning, unless I was a seller myself, an underpinning of sales operations. And so, really thinking about my customers as the folks who generate the revenue. John Fryer at T-Mobile has this saying: you either serve the customer or you serve someone who serves the customer. And so, keeping that at the forefront and understanding that, the folks in the field are the folks who generate the annuitized stream of income that make a company's cash flow go. And so really keeping that top of mind. However, that needs to be balanced with a lot of judgment and governance thinking, as far as clean processes, making sure that people do things the right way, people are following the rules, so the company has a future. So you don't end up in a Wells Fargo situation where you've got a front page story that's really unflattering to the company and does damage for years to come. And so definitely the field has always been my focus, but then additionally, of course, my teams, right? And so just leading and loving my teams every day, whether or not I was a leader, right? Being that collaborative colleague, being that trusted manager who is looking out for their team, not just for their own best interest.
I know the first time that we chatted, we talked about psychological safety, and you just
Yeah,
mentioned, um, loving your team. And I think, those are two things that should be going hand in hand. But I think as leaders over the years, we've avoided words that are too emotional, too caring, too, fuzzy. And I think that that's a mistake we've made. Talking about loving your people, I think is so important to that psychological safety piece. Can you speak to that for a minute?
absolutely. And this is something that I'm very passionate about. And when I don't see it, it really turns me off. And so, yeah, psychological safety is such a buzzword nowadays. And, it's one of those business phrases that people can really, roll their eyes at or turn their noses up, but I think they do so to their peril. And so what psychological safety really means is just that people have the freedom to speak up. People have the freedom to speak up when somebody's doing something morally wrong. People have the freedom to speak up when something is going operationally wrong. And the freedom, I think it all starts with the freedom to be able to challenge your manager. And so in my teams that I've led, it's a very flat approach. I am not scared to have a team member challenge me. I am not scared to have a team member say why, or would it make more sense to do it this way? I think that respect goes both ways. They respect me as a leader because I'm willing to listen to them, and and I respect them for having the bravery and the courage to speak up and make sure that things are going the right way. But the love piece, let me pivot to the love piece. And again, that's really squishy. This is one of the things that brands me. Some people are afraid to use the word love in the workplace because it's, yeah, squishy and emotional. If you have trouble displaying love and whatever that means to you, or caring, or as they say in educational circles, unconditional positive regard. If you have trouble doing that with people generally, then you might want to gut check and see if management is really for you. People are messy. People have complicated lives. It takes a while to uncover people's talent. It takes a while to uncover people's motivation. And if you're not doing it from a place of love, then it's going to be really hard for you, and you might do some damage. When people don't have the barriers of negativity, when those barriers of negativity are gone away, when you have to spend too much time questioning somebody's motives or questioning whether or not somebody is actually for you, you waste a lot of time. You waste a lot of time that could be used on the work. So if I can come to work and say, my manager cares about me, I know my manager's got my best interest at heart, I know that if something goes wrong, I can openly and honestly tell my manager precisely what happened with no shine, and they will work side by side to help it get corrected. And then we can worry about, how to mitigate in the future without all of this extra emotional garbage to work through. If I can come with positive, to a place where there's positive intent and not a lot of negativity, that's a whole other set of work that I don't have to do before the work even begins.
Absolutely. And I remember when we first chatted, you and I got so excited that we
Yeah.
both have been using strengths-based leadership for some time,
Mhm.
talking about uncovering people's talents, uncovering people's motivations,
Yeah.
caring about them, being positive. I've used strengths-based leadership for almost 20 years now, and I
Yeah.
use it in my coaching now. It's a
Mhm.
foundational aspect of my leadership practice. Can you talk about it with yours?
We all have table stakes in our work. There are always things that must be done. I call it, I say, somebody's got to take out the garbage, right? Somebody's got to take out the garbage in every role. But then there are also things, unique things, special things that people bring to the workplace. And that's where you get your value add, and you don't want to ignore those things. And so strength-based leadership essentially is just going through and really understanding your people, understanding what their talents are, and making sure that no matter what the role is, those talents get expressed. So I think about a situation where I had two individuals, two brilliant young women in the same exact job title, doing very different things. One person was very communications oriented, built gorgeous PowerPoints, was very good at training, building training. And then the other young woman was fantastic at systems and processes and relationships with engineering, and building processes end to end that were clean and made sense. And so there was some overlap in those roles, but the talents that these women brought to the same role was quite different, and I couldn't do without either one. Strength-based leadership is just so important. There's the basics. Everybody's got to do the basics, or your team can't run. But do not ignore those unique strengths that other folks bring to the table. And so as far as cultivating a garden, there are all sorts of plants that belong in your garden. Some are flowering, you've got your fruits and vegetables. Each thing has a place to make a healthy garden. And so you really want to cultivate your garden, but you're not going to cultivate your cucumbers the same way you're going to cultivate your tea roses, right? And so you need to be very mindful of that.
You got me all curious about your three pillars now. Tell me.
Oh, yes. 3 pillars. Okay, so number 1, table stakes, plus natural strength equals engagement. So we've spoken to this a little bit earlier, but table stakes, again, things got to get done. The garbage has got to get taken out. That's basic. But you add the strengths, right? You add the unique things that somebody offers to the role. Somebody's good at analysis. Somebody's good at project management. Somebody's good at communication. Maybe it's not in the job description, but you give them an opportunity to shine in addition to the table stakes so that the regular work gets done. And you've got this amazing amount of engagement where people are delighted to show up to work every day. That's pillar number one. Pillar number two is problems and complaints are inputs to problem solving. And so what that means is I welcome problems and complaints, right? If somebody, again, that's psychological safety, if somebody speaks up to what's wrong, either outside of the team or within the team, we know that that's something on our to-do list that we've got to go fix. It's up to us to prioritize whether this is super duper important, needs to be done now, so that urgent and important as far as the Stephen Covey framework, or maybe it's important but not urgent, and we can kind of get to it and plan for when we're going to address it. And so those problems and complaints are inputs to problem solving. Listen to what the problems and complaints are so that you know which problems to solve, you know where your process improvement needs to go. That's number two. Number three, and we've spoken to this already, is lead from a place of love. And this is something that's very important to me. Again, that outpouring of love. And if you can't do it, it's okay. You know, we are more friendly to mental health in the workplace than we ever have been before. But if you've got trouble leading from a place of love, or whatever word you want to use in place of love, if you've got trouble leading from a place of love, then go do your own internal work. Get a coach, get a mentor, go to therapy. It's okay. But that leading from a place of love and making sure that the team knows you've got their best interest at heart in good times and in bad times, that's really meaningful. And so I would say leading from a place of love is not just squishy kumbaya. You can tell hard truths and still be loving about it. But if you are loving, I think that gives you a basis of trust for people to engage with you.
I always say, I can coach you in or I can coach you out, and it's no hard
Mhm.
feelings. That
Yeah.
if we can have these honest conversations and do it with care and
Mhm.
recognize what is working for you and what isn't, I hope you thank me and I thank you if it's a coach in or coach out situation, right? If I have to coach you out and you head out into the sunset and you have a new opportunity on the horizon, I hope
Yeah.
we can high five on the way out. That was the right choice. And I think helping you get there means that I also did my job well, right? It means that I did a good job of helping you better align to what brings joy to your life.
Yes, and that alignment is so important. I think we've all been there, Christine, where we've had a moment where we were out of alignment with something that it just wasn't working for us. And that opportunity to move on to something else, that opportunity to get to a place where there's deeper alignment, I think makes all the difference in the world.
We talk about people leadership is hard and it's
Mm.
complicated because people are complicated, dynamic humans with emotions. What is your biggest challenge or roadblock right now in people leadership?
Just to be super transparent, I am good at loving my teams. I am good at building side to side relationships. Managing up has always been a little bit of a challenge for me. And it comes from a place of not wanting to ever say no, wanting to be kind of an agreeable person. And I think and I'm just going to say it, a lot of Black women really struggle with that because we don't want to be seen as difficult in the workplace, and we want to be seen as hardworking in the workplace. And so that's something that I'm working through, is just walking that line of, this is what I can realistically take on. This is where I'm going to need some help. Part of that is just delegating early. Part of that is delegating to my team early. Part of that is delegating to peers early, or even delegating back up to leadership. But part of it is just learning the right way to say no. And a lot of times it's a matter of producing the right data or producing the right story to help leadership understand why it's not practical or even risky to pursue X project. That delegating up piece, I'm working through it, but I know I'll get there. And even now I'm building some tools to get that done.
Leading across, leading up, or leading down, if you will. That there are spaces and places for advocacy and support and care, and creating healthy boundaries when there's a power dynamic can be really hard. And then you tack on, the intersectionality of being a Black woman and the intersectionality of being a woman leader, and it gets a little complicated.
It does. It does. And that's why, we have such admiration for when we see women who have done it well, when we see, yeah, the Indra Nuis of the world, or, the Ursula Burns of the world, or, there's so many Melody Hobsons, when we see those powerful women of color really make it and really perform that balance. Um, it's so inspiring. But breaking through and learning the balance of this is where I challenge, or this is where I lean in. It is a difficult task to master.
So I'd love for you to tell us about an experience that you've had that maybe went sideways and
Yeah.
you were completely out of your comfort zone and you found yourself having to use your strengths and leadership skills to navigate out of it.
Yeah, I'll answer this question just a little bit differently. I think about nearing the end of my MBA career and wondering what I was going to do next. There had already been some tricky things that started to happen at Wells Fargo, and so I left Wells Fargo for a role supporting a CEO of a company. And while I thought it would be sort of more of a chief of staff kind of role or a business analyst kind of role, it ended up being a lot of calendar and lunch. And so pivoted to that, leaned into that, made a lot of good relationships in that role. But I was coming to the end of my MBA journey, and just wanted to think differently about my career. And so I ended up applying to be on a game show, and won, a good chunk of money on a game show, and it was really fun. The
Well,
experience,
wait.
yeah,
You applied to be on a game show. They found you to
yeah.
be on a game show. How did you get yourself in the position to be
Yeah,
on a game
it was a
show?
casting call. So in the Seattle area, it was a casting call in Bell Harbor for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It was a cattle call. I stood in line, did the written test, did an interview, a person-to-person interview, did an on-camera interview, and then got a postcard in the mail. And I was like, oh, this can't be for real. And then they called me and I said, well, I don't know. And they were like, this is the experience of a lifetime, Bethany. So they flew me out to New York. I met Meredith Vieira. I won a good chunk of change. And then I was able to really focus on finishing my MBA. I did some volunteer work at the Seattle Symphony. I mean, it was just the coolest thing. And so I just say, it was kind of a challenging situation, but I was able to pivot because again, that adaptability and being able to make the most of the challenges that are set before you.
Our community is full of engaged women who are just really always looking at that self-reflection and ways to continuously learn in their own spaces and places. Are there some books or podcasts that you would recommend to us to continue us on our journey?
One of the things that I think that's been really impactful is the book Crucial Conversations. I mentioned earlier, one of my items that I'm working on is managing up. And of course, in managing up, there's a lot of difficult conversations that you have to prepare yourself for. Another thing that I mentioned just briefly in passing is Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. And a particularly helpful tool from that book is just the 4 quadrants of prioritization. One of the podcasts that I think is just for fun is WTF with Marc Maron. Now, if you've got tender ears and you don't like a lot of strong languages, maybe leave it. But the thing about this podcast is that it really goes to the depths of people's motivation. And you learn a lot. The common thread in this is just how someone starts kind of impacts how they finish.
As we're wrapping up our time here together, which makes me a little sad, I'm gonna be honest, Is there something that you wish I would have asked you that I haven't yet, or something that we should know about you?
I think I started this conversation talking a little bit about my family life, and I'll wrap it with my family life. One of the questions that I know a lot of women, once they reach a certain level in leadership is just how do you manage it all? And particularly, right, if you have children. I don't want to be one of those people who shies away from it. I have two small children. One is 6 and one is 3.5, and we're in the thick of it. And I would just say, there are always trade-offs, and you have to figure out what is important to you and what's going to be important to your family life. So the things that I've chosen to prioritize is, Sunday nights, I have a standing date with my husband. He's my pal, my good friend, my co-parent, my business partner. And he's just a lot of fun to hang out with. We're very different people, but I just enjoy his company and I enjoy his presence. Typically, we go to the same chain restaurant and we go grocery shopping. But sometimes, we go for a walk, or sometimes we go see a movie. And but that quality time together is really important to us. And then for my kids, just investing in who they are and who they've been created to be. And so I think about, my oldest daughter, who right now is really into swimming. And so we're investing a lot of time and a lot of resources in swimming just to make sure that, she has the opportunity to get as good as she wants to get. And so, I'm really proud of her. She's got the beginnings of a really great backstroke, and we hope it continues, but she's a kid and things change. And then my little one, my 3.5-year-old, she was tumbling on the furniture a lot, and she's a go-getter and a daredevil and not afraid of anything. And so, of course, we have her in gymnastics, and she's really loving it. And so I would just say this for women who are working and aspire to, great heights in their career. Just figure out what you're going to prioritize. And it's okay. You can have a family and do it. It's sometimes exhausting and sometimes you need to take a break. But just what's going to be important to you? One of the toughest working situations I ever had was I asked my hiring manager what they did for fun, and they said work. That should have been assigned to me right away. It was a very tough working environment. Whole people make good businesses.
Well, I love that you talked about the meaningfulness in your private life, in your personal life, and being able to come to work as a whole person. I think a lot of women that find this community have the same sentiments as you. And so I'm glad that you're a part of this community as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Christine. Delight to talk with you.
Same.
Thanks for joining us today in the Executives Lounge, where we bust open the doors, slam through the ceilings, and make sure that we have a spot at the table and that we are the lounge. I am Christine Fauner, your executive leadership expert, continuously looking for those executive leaders that seek community, continuous learning, and have a desire to find the next adventure. Join us next time. Join our Facebook group, Roam Your Soul, and you can also find us on Instagram at Roam Your Soul. And don't forget to check out the website for upcoming adventures, www.roamyoursoul.com. And if you're looking for that next executive level leadership coach, you can find me at roamyoursoul.com/Christine Fauner Coaching.